Finally, on the 19th of October 2023, King of the Clouds was released. And this is why I like the album. Hi everybody, my name is Kole, and today we're going to do something a little bit different on this channel. I'm going to review the album King of Clouds by The Wild Wolves. Just over a month ago was the album release King of Clouds by The Wild Wolves, an indie pop, indie rock band from the United States, specifically New York City. The album featured 10 different songs, and you can listen to these songs on different major streaming platforms right now. Let's get straight into it with the first or opening track, Fast Maneuvers. That's a cool opening. So the first thing we hear is the vocals and guitar in quite a intimate sort of performance. It's pretty interesting, actually. And then, like, 10 seconds in comes the full instrumentation in a very pop rock sort of style. I also just wanted to say I love the album artwork. It's very psychedelic looking and it's just really cool. So I was also speaking to James Wolfe about the entire album, and the album artwork was specifically himself, almost. The album artwork is like a psychedelic self-portrait of James Wolfe, the creator of Wild Wolves. And personally, I think it encapsulates the electronic and psychedelic sort of style of the music, which in more of a pop rock sense is pretty cool. And throughout the album, you'll hear different electronic elements coming in, as well as the hard-hitting guitar riffs, which I think is a pretty cool contrast between the two, and it's pretty interesting. Throughout that song, the Fast Maneuvers, I can hear kind of like around the 30-second mark, like it sounds like an erhu, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, instrument, or like a string type of instrument. That really sounds interesting, especially with the drums that are quite solid, hard-hitting, very kind of typical rock sort of drums. That erhu or string instrument sounds really interesting and quite delicate in contrast, which is definitely an interesting choice, but I like that. It's something different, and that's exactly what I like. I like different music and stuff that is not the same as everybody else's, and something that actually has personality to it, which this album does. Ooh, that's cool. Around the 1 minute mark, there's a very delicate guitar sort of sound inside, which is really cool, and I like that. It's very professional sounding too. Like, I'm not sure how this album was recorded, but it's very well performed and very well recorded, super high quality. And for kind of an indie kind of genre, it's very different to hear something that is very high quality and not like a typical DIY sound, which you'd hear in a lot of albums of a similar genre. Like an indie typically means like independent sort of thing, which in theory kind of gives the idea of DIY musician, which this definitely doesn't have. It has that very high quality, very well performed style and performance in general to it. That is some nice distortion. I like that. Around the 1 minute 20 mark, the strings comes back in with it sounds like phaser. Like a phaser is used to kind of bring the sound in and out. I'm not sure how to explain it, but it's really interesting. And with the drums kind of at a steady pace in the background, the string and very kind of high-pitched, rhythmic, synthy type of sound, it's kind of full. That's a really cool. There's some really nice synths used in this as well. I like that. If you didn't know, I really like synths. I am a very electronic sort of person. I love electronic music, and that is kind of what I focus on in general. More of experimental side is what I personally love to make, and this has those elements of kind of experimentation and just trying new things, especially in a genre that's more indie pop, indie rock. You don't hear a lot of synths in those types of songs. In those types of songs, you don't hear many synths, and that is definitely a unique element of this, and I love that. I can kind of hear, I don't know if I hear like a solid piano sort of thing in that before the vocals come back in at around like 2 minute sort of area in like the instrumental part. It sounds like there's like a solid kind of piano hard pattern. That's cool. Ooh. Whoa, that's cool. Okay, right at the end of the song, there's some like delayed vocals. Right at the end, that's really nice sounding. Like, that's a cool effect. I like that. I like that a lot. Sorry. So, yeah, that's cool. If you want to hear the full album, it is on, like, any major streaming platform you can name, including Spotify, which is what I currently use. You You can also find the Wild Wolves on their website, thewildwolves.net, and they have like a lot of different pages on the website explaining about the band, talking about the artist James Wolfe, and just different things about the band, including their full discography. So if you're interested, go to the website or find them on streaming platforms. The next song on the album is New Age Thinking, and just the name in general has a lot of new age instrumentation and sounds very interesting already, which I'm going to give it a listen now. So it's got a piano, which is a nice thing to have already, but some very low bass kind of synth and sounds like electronic drums. Oh, ooh, those vocals are really nice. So I have already listened to this album before to do like a full document review if you want to read that. Link will be in the description of this, as well as the link to the Wild Wolves website, and I'm in the link in the description. I have noticed the vocals sound like very soft, almost like a falsetto-y style, and that's really cool. They're very ghostly sounding, which is nice to hear. From a lot of experience with indie pop, you have a lot of just generally talking volume, talking level sort of thing, and something that's kind of softer, more ghostly is definitely something different to have in the genre. And it sounds really nice, especially with the like soft pads in the background and the bass kind of synth that plays at the beginning. I'm not sure if it is bass as such, but it is very harder hitting with like, it sounds like distortion or at least a sawtooth wave, and it kind of pushes the track with it sounds like an 808 style or maybe 707 drum kit style thing. Ooh, I didn't realize this the first time I listened to it through, but like around the 30-second mark it just kind of cuts to not the bass riff but like a very smooth, almost ocean style pad. That's how I think of describing it, and I like that. That is really cool. I like this. Sorry. Oh, I love that. It's like a falsetto. We're not so far away. That is really nice. But it's done with like a piano and soft sort of pad in the background. All the other instrumentation just cuts out and then it kind of straight back in. And it is like a nice rest in the song for, I don't know how to explain how I'm thinking, but like a pause just for the music to kind of speak for itself and the vocals cut straight through it, which it sounds so cool, and it's definitely not something I've heard. It's not something I've heard in a long time in different... I listen to a lot of music, and this is very unique sounding. I'm around the like 1 minute 30 mark, and it has like a New Order kind of sort of vibe going on at the moment, and like a glitchy sort of sound. Again, that's something that I really appreciate and really like. And with the very soft vocals going on, it's kind of reminding me of Radiohead, the kind of OK Computer sort of era. And it's very interesting to hear. Yeah, I like it. I like this so far. The vocals are quite staccato as well, I've noticed. So with the constant kind of pads and the constant instrumentation, that doesn't seem to... It's kind of legato sort of sounding. The vocals kind of, I don't know, it brings attention to the vocals more with the staccato sort of singing. I love that. I love that falsetto. I'm not sure how to explain it, but we're not so far away. It's very delicate and very, with every instrument kind of cutting down, lowering the volume, very dynamic. It's the vocals cut through it and then back away again as the instrumentation kind of cuts its way back up. It's very... I don't know how to explain what I'm thinking, but the dynamics are really, really interesting in it, where it's constantly kind of building up to a peak. The peak is the falsetto, like, we're not so far away, dropping back down to or at least to like a mid-level where it's back to normal, and then calms down again, back to the peak. It's really interesting to hear, and very good use of dynamics through the song. I'm not sure if that's a guitar in the background or like a very... Sounds like a wobbly synth, as if it's like got a... Not an LFO on it, but a vibrato in it, like a pitch bend sort of sound. Reminds me of a shaky vocal almost. And it adds more humanness to the track. More personality, sorry. And that's different. You usually, especially a lot of songs on the radio at the moment, my brain instantly just thinks they all sound the same, and as generic as that thought would be, they all have the same constant sort of pattern, not changing much throughout, maybe having a bit of dynamics with the vocals, but they don't experiment much, And this is exactly what I'm thinking with this album. It is experimenting with different sounds, styles, and the indie pop and indie rock are the main two factors within this, but there also is a lot of electronic experimentation with it, which adds a lot of change to the environment, as if it's trying to merge a couple of genres together, or more than just the indie pop, indie rock. It's trying to twist a perception and add a new feel to it, and it kind of encapsulates well with the name of the song, A New Age Thinking, with the new age sort of sounds, the synths and stuff, which really cut through and add a whole new element to the song, which you wouldn't usually get generally from music these days. That's different. There's a very loop. Some parts of this song are quite repetitive, especially after the 2:30 sort of mark, which we're on now. We're on about 2:48. There is like it's reminding me of a printer or some sort of like electronic machine that's thinking of something or doing a process, and the repetitiveness is a little bit disorienting at first, and that's something to maybe think about. Part of the song, and it's something that definitely adds a new element to it, and not exactly the dynamics, but it has all the other instrumentation cuts down, like I said, and this pulsating sort of sound brings back to the front, like the vocals were doing previously, with the staccato sort of sound, and that's kind of filling the gap of the staccato, which is pretty cool. It has like an 8-bit feel. So once the pulsating finishes, sounds like a sawtooth with synth, which, I don't know, it's nice. It's very retro-feely, sort of retro feel to it, kind of like an 8-bit game, or I don't know, my first thought would be the Tetris soundtrack. I'm not saying it's trying to copy that in any way. Next we got Electric Sky. This is one of the longer tracks on the album at about 5 minutes 20, so let's get started. The vocals go straight in, there's no like build-up or anything, which is different. Usually, like, very unique vocal style in this, with kind of straight away all the vocals and instrumentation comes in, which from the second track doesn't leave much time to think. I'm listening to the album in order, so with no gaps in between, it's very strange to hear no proper start, in a sense, no fade in, like, or build up, in a sense, for the first chorus or verse, which this just jumps straight in as if it doesn't need to wait, and you just kind of adjust to it very quickly. I like that. I'm used to having, in my own music, I like building up to the first verse as if to slowly draw the listener in, and this kind of just throws it straight at you, as if make your judgment quickly and listen to it now before it stops, if that makes sense. Like, listen to it now before it goes away forever, sort of feel like this is your only chance to listen to it, so do it now, and like, hurry up with it, basically. I love the guitars. They are really deep, like very rhythmic sounds. Obviously it's a rhythmic guitar, it's a rock sort of style song, but they're very, not overly distorted. The singer's really unique, got a really unique voice, and that's definitely an interesting factor, and is quite an interest to the forefront. It should be more at the forefront. I feel like the guitars are kind of taking away a bit of the attention from the vocalist, and I feel maybe it should be more up to the front, the vocals, because that is really a unique element, and that's what makes this album so far completely unique and different to hear, whereas a lot of the time they're just kind of, this instrument's the same, the drum pattern's basically the same with the constant hi-hats going. The vocals are what you're meant to focus on. In this, the vocals are definitely a unique element, but the instrumentation in a couple of these songs seems kind of repetitive. I love the style of it, and I love the album so far. It's really an interesting album, and I believe the artist on the album art is James Wolfe, and like a self-portrait sort of image of himself. And I'm not sure if he's the singer, but as far as I know, the singer of this band is this person to me. The way I see it is, the singer is the person, the clouds in the background of the album art are the instrumentation. They change constantly, as clouds do, but the vocalist is the unique point in this, and I think that needs to be focused on so much more, because the vocalist is brilliant. And so is the instrumentation, don't get me wrong, I love it, but the vocalist is it's so good. That's a very a very smooth vocal. Very. I'm not sure how to explain. It's like a pitch bend in the vocal. That's not okay. I think that's what he's saying. I'm not 100% sure. Oh, okay. Oh, that fades off with like a reverb in the end. That's a nice effect. It kind of... So the vocals go... fade off into the distance. That's very smooth. The vocalist is still reminding me. It's very unique, but it reminds me a little bit of Radiohead. Just the style and the way... The timbre of the voice. That's really nice. It's very smooth, very well-trained vocals. And it's something that takes a lot of attention towards in a good way. You know what I mean? Like the singing in cursive almost. That is very overdone. Whereas this type of ghostly vocals isn't done too often. And it's contrasting. It's contrasting with the deep electronic and deep guitars and very hard-hitting rockish sort of sound. It's cool. I like this. I really do like this song. I think it might be one of my favourites. I'm not sure if the drums are real drums in this. Some tracks it sounds like they are real acoustic drums. This one it kind of sounds more MIDI drums. I'm not sure if it is, but they're produced quite well. They are the velocity. If it is MIDI, it doesn't sound like there's too much dynamic in the hi-hats, for example. That sounds kind of all at the same. If it's velocity, if it's a MIDI, it's velocity. If it sounds all like it's on a similar sort of velocity, which an improvement or change I'd make to that is trying to humanize them more. So changes in velocity, kind of more of a randomness, in a sense, or at least a pseudo randomness, which a computer. I think that would kind of finalize any element of this track and make it just that bit more realistic in the drums. I don't know if that's what the artist was going for, but personally that's what I'd say. A bit more humanness or realism on the drums would be changes in velocity if it is MIDI. If it is real acoustic drums, it still sounds great. There is a huge human element to the synths as well. It's very, not perfectly on time, just a tiny fraction potentially on parts out, which adds it and makes it smoother and more human, where the drums are very solid parts and not as enough dynamics in the drums, which is something I really like. I like a lot of dynamics, especially in drums. I like a bit more randomness in it. So that is a different element that I appreciate. There's like a little bit of falsetto going on in there. That's a really nice bass line. I love that. So around the 3-minute mark is where I'm up to now. There is like a really nice bass line going on. That's cool. It's like it sounds like it's layered almost. So a lot of low end and then like doubled up essentially to an extra octave. So it's double the frequency and fills more of it. That's nice. I like that. Sorry about the changing camera angle for 2 seconds. My camera is just charging again because I'm an idiot. So we're gonna listen to the next song, which is A Fast Life That Goes Nowhere. Again, this one kind of comes in pretty straight away. So in between the two songs, it doesn't really leave much time for the listener to have a break, especially if you're just playing like I am constantly. There's like a high-pitched synth going on in that, kind of a piano-y sort of sound. And the vocals are really distorted, but that's something that I really like listening to. I like listening to heavy distorted vocals. So that's something that we didn't get in the previous couple of songs. That is another unique element to this song. The synth line, and that's quite repetitive. The at about the 1 minute mark, the vocals stop being distorted. It's kind of a change in pace, I guess. I don't know. Well, the song's called A Fast Life That Goes Nowhere, so my instant sort of thought towards it is changing environment quickly. The idea that it's kind of bringing to mind for me, you don't want to waste time doing a specific thing constantly. You need to pace yourself, and changes are okay, which in this song is the idea is given when the change in vocals changes from so the vocals change from very distorted to very clean. Has a very clubby sort of vibe to this with the or house sort of vibe with the piano pattern in the background. And the offbeat hi-hat's nice as well. That's something different that we haven't heard that in the other few songs. It's quite upper beat. It's more upbeat than the other three, which all four so far have been very upbeat in sound. and more paced, whereas this is faster, which I get kind of makes sense with A Fast Life That Goes Nowhere. That's a very nice effect, very good effect, a good usage of like a delay. This album has the dynamics in like a pattern of life almost, like you have a good days and you have bad days, and that is an interesting concept for an album, or at least an interesting concept to have inside the albums, or at least the way the songs were chosen, the order. Ooh, there's an arpeggio going on in the background with the strings as well. Sorry, not the strings. Strings are quite a smooth pad sort of sound, but there's in the background the piano's doing a do 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 do, an arpeggio, and that adds another rhythmic element. It is a straight arpeggio, so no twinkly bits and stuff, but that's just filling up the space of sound in a sense, so kind of all frequencies are kind of accounted for. There's a glitchy sort of... The hi-hats in this next bit, in around the 1 minute 40 mark, are quite glitchy sounding, or tinny. I appreciate unusual, and those hi-hats are definitely unusual, and I like that. The build-up towards the end is really good. It kind of adds all the previously introduced elements in one to just kind of get a final sound. Has a very harsh stop. It doesn't fade out or anything, it stops dead in its tracks and then just ready to go into the next song. There must be some meaning towards that. I feel like there will be some form of meaning towards it just stopping, and maybe I do sound a little bit like an English teacher trying to find meaning in everything going, but I don't know, I just feel like there should, if there is some form of meaning, that's good, but I feel like there should be a meaning towards it where if it's a fast life that goes nowhere, it doesn't fade out slowly. It kind of leaves that end up to the listener to choose how it ends. It cuts off all instrumentation, and I find it a bit of a harsh stop. And some different ways to end songs. I know it is from experience, it's hard to end songs and find different ways to end these songs, especially when the songs are kind of longer in duration, like this one was 5 minutes 19. When songs are long, you don't want to make it any longer necessarily, but you also don't want to cut it off too short, so finding that balance is something that definitely could be worked on, maybe. There's a million different ways you can end a song. I like having an element of cutting different instruments out, so it's a gradual slowdown. Almost you're going up onto a peak and then slowing back down, or dropping back down and then kind of coming back to a recovery, like a roller coaster. You'd be building up. Here's the peak. You have to drop it really quick to get a tension release and then bring it to a slow halt. That's how I imagine some different songs could be done, and that's how I like to make my own. And it is repetitive. The way I do it can be very repetitive, but it's just different to hear, and very interesting idea that you bring a song all the way up to its peak, drop it, quick tension, build it up again, and keep it on that same tension as if it's the next song will relieve that tension. And that is another reason why it's very important to build up a correct kind of order and playthrough of the album, which The Wild Wolves has done perfectly in this sense. They've made it a very interesting story where it's constantly changing its dynamics and spreading and telling the story throughout. I like that very much. It's a different way to end a song that I've never used before and definitely will experiment with. The next song is The Heart Is Always Searching. Let's give it a listen. One thing I've just quickly noticed is that this is the longest song on the album. It looks like at about 5:40. It is 5 minutes 40. And it's like a 2000s style emo rock or indie rock type of song. So far, I really like it. This is very up my street. I listen to a lot of indie rock and kind of rock sort of music. So this is very up my street. So let's have a listen. Okay. Oh. the drums just cut out, played another couple of bars, and then it just went to I think it's a chorus. Ooh. There's a nice synth there as well. Very crispy. It's quite repetitive with the guitars. The drums kind of have a dynamic to them where they're cutting in and out, but the guitars has kind of a riff that goes through the full thing, but with a little top line on it. Every so often there's like a synth, a sawtooth sort of synth playing as if instead of the bass or instead of a bass guitar. Ooh, whoa, whoa. That kind of threw me off for a second. There's a lead synth at around the 2-minute-ish mark. I'm at 2:10, so 2:10-ish mark. That's quite kind of threw me off a little bit. I'm not sure what to think of it exactly, but yeah. Next song, which is Everybody Is Wondering. Let's get straight on with it. The vocals on this one already seem kind of louder, or like they're mixed differently than some of the other tracks. I love the drum beat as well. That is a very nice drum beat. And the vocals don't seem as soft as the previous songs, almost. I think the song's like, it sounds to me like it'd be a love song or something, or well, at least a relationship sort of song. And I know the one lyric that feels kind of, it sticks out to me, which I assume is like the title lyric, is everybody's wondering, but nobody is asking. A very well written song, very well written lyrics. Sounds like I think it seems to be like a relationship song, which is a tough conversation sort of song. I'm not sure what to think of it really. I think it is, I don't know, it's very kind of speaking in past tense in parts, or at least kind of reminiscing on something, like reminiscing on a past relationship, with parts of it like, I'm finally ready. And I think it may be one of my favourite tracks on the album, which I probably shouldn't say, but it's a really good song. I really like it. I forgot about this when I was first listening to it, but around 2:30 mark, there's a really nice xylophone pattern. Like, I think it's a xylophone or like a glockenspiel, not a glockenspiel, marimba, something along those lines. So it kind of splits the song in two parts in a sense, because after it kind of goes back to the main beat and main pattern, and it adds a pause to it, like changing of perspective, almost. Has like a lo-fi feel to it as well. Around 3:49, which is where I'm at right now, feels like there's the guitar in the background. It sounds like it's a solo, which is a nice addition. You haven't had that in other songs yet, so I really do like the lyrics. So right at the end, it cuts off all the instruments except like a pad sort of sound, and just has the vocals on like a couple of layers, like harmonies and stuff. That is a really good addition to have to the song, so it's not cutting off straight away like A Fast Life That Goes Nowhere did, kind of cut off right at the end. It's really good to hear a different way of ending the song on the Everybody's Wondering, which is kind of stops all the instrumentation and then just has the vocals, which really brings attention to the beautiful and unique vocalist, the beautiful voice of the vocalist, which I think is very much needed in any situation like this when there is such a unique sound. Next track, number 7, is No Turning Back, which it comes in straight away and it kind of has a tension, like a tension build up to it straight away, which I find interesting. It's picked up speed. The tempo change is interesting as well. It's another thing you don't really hear in music at the moment, or these days, generally speaking. You don't hear much changing in tempo. And another reference to a Kole song, Are You Serious? Has well, I don't know if it changes tempo. It kind of gets faster throughout the bass part of that song at the beginning, and I don't know, building tension in a sense. That's what it's given me the idea of. It's building the story and building a speeding up tension. Oh, again, we've got the 8-bit feel synth going on in the background. Very retro sort of feel to it, which I like. I like synth, as I've mentioned. I do want to kind of clarify again, this song has more of an electronic drum sort of sound going on in it, and as much as I do love that, I think that the velocity on the MIDI drums, I assume it's done with MIDI, but kind of has to be, but either way, I think the velocity could do with being more humanised to add a bit more interest, to add a little bit more interest into the track, and more, so it's less like a loop in a sense, as if you've just dragged and dropped a loop in. More humanness. I think that would kind of complete the idea of the song and make it feel fuller, and as if, I don't know, I think it'd just make it feel a little bit more professional, which I'm not saying it isn't professional, but I think just that added element would just kind of take it to the next level. I like the break part in this as well, where it has calms down a bit with the do 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 around 2 minutes 20ish. That's nice addition to have. Again, like another just like one thing I learned with music is silence is just as good as an instrument as a guitar is. You can't make music without silence, because silence is an instrument in and of itself. And one of my tutors taught me this for music, and I've always thought about it that it adds more than it takes. So adding quiet parts to songs, or just having a break and a quick second of silence, means the part that comes after it has more energy towards it, because it's kind of been waiting for it in a sense. And I think that'd be like that's what that was kind of going for just then. And it's a good idea to potentially have more of that in. The kind of growing distortion as well is a nice effect to have, or a very interesting effect at least. I don't know, I think it's a cool sound device, is distortion. So that's a good effect that they've added into this. And I do appreciate it. I appreciate a good bit of distortion. I also want to note, like, the end of this song also is a little bit different from some of the other songs. Like I said with Everybody's Wondering, it doesn't just cut off. It kind of, as I heard, like, it brings all the instruments up with a lot of distortion into essentially a wall of sound, and then brings all that slowly back down for the ending with just vocals and like a chimey sort of sound, which is a cool addition and definitely a change in pace than some of the other songs that just cut off straight away. It kind of brings the song to a resolution almost. Next we got Are You Even Satisfied? Are You Even Satisfied, which is a glitchy type of vibe to it, and with very fast drums, which I like, and it has like my instant thought would be like a fantasy dream sort of world, and a lot of swirly synths, which I really like. Has a very glitchy feel with it. Oh, and the first synth kind of closes down with the EQ, almost like it's cutting off all the high frequencies and doing a little filter right at the beginning. Well, it's bringing it back open as well now. Love the mix of the filtered synth arpeggio at the beginning. That kind of goes through for a little while, and then the heavily distorted guitars for like the chorus sort of parts. I just wanted to clarify as well, this is the longest song on the album at 5:55. I've never written a song that's that long. I've written a couple of like piano sort of songs that are longer than that, but for an indie rock sort of song, it's very strange, or at least different to me, how they're 5 minutes 55. I don't write long songs generally, and typically in pop and kind of rockish sort of songs you get 2 to 4 minutes. So a 5 minute 55 song without any major drastic changes throughout can get a little bit repetitive at times, which in some songs is great and some ideas is great, but I think unless there's any drastic changes throughout the song, or like parts in a sense, it can get quite repetitive, which, as much as I like this song and I really do appreciate the album and I love the album, it's very repetitive. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but for someone who's listening to it constantly, and if you listen to it every so often, it's not too bad, but if you're listening to it constantly, it can get quite disorienting at times. So that is an improvement that I would suggest for the future potentially. Maybe shorten some songs. And there's nothing wrong with having a song that's less than 4 minutes, less than 2 minutes. It just happens, and sometimes if you're in a flow with music, it can lead to a longer song, especially if you've written so much and you want to get your writing really out there. This is the perfect example of that, when you've written so much and you want it to be a full story, or at least a good part of a full story, and you don't want to be cut off and restricted to 2 minute albums. 3 minute songs. This is track number 9, Science and Understanding. My first thought, really quickly, is the instrumentation is brilliant on this. The actual instrumental is so good. It's already like a fully fledged instrumental and could be a song on its own. And the vocals, as soon as they come in around the 15 to 20-second mark, are very full of emotion. They remind me of the song Brother in Arms by Dire Straits, which is, with the unique vocals of Dire Straits, you can understand what I'm on about. The unique vocalist for The Wild Wolves has such an emotion-filled voice. It can instantly convey whatever message. And in this case, I'm not sure what the message is exactly yet. And I imagine with fully listening to it and potentially reading the lyrics, I would get there and learn a lot more. But there is so much emotion carried in the singer's voice that any instrumentation for this does not do it justice. This, however, is such a fully formed, already created instrumental part that could be released as its own if you really wanted. It could work as its own song without any vocals. The vocals just bring it to the next level. There's a really nice string instrument in there, kind of, I think it's like the Erhu thing again from, I think is it New Age Thinking or Fast Maneuvers? They're like a string instrument, like kind of panned, sort of. It just reminds me of like an orchestral sort of feel with like a little guitar riff in this, guitar rhythm within it. I don't know, it's a really interesting addition and very vibrant sound and quite a higher pitch, so it kind of pushes through the mix. I also love the vocal harmonies and like layers, because you can tell it's kind of like doubled vocals or a couple of different layers of vocals, but that just adds to the sound completely. It just showcases the talent of the singer. I'm not sure how else to explain it, but if you when you're listening to the song, you really can feel the performance just going through the instrumental and just feel the emotion in the singer's voice. And it's a beautiful voice and beautiful vocals, beautiful lyrics too. So this is a very good song. One thing I would know is the vocals at parts do seem kind of quiet in the mix, and with potentially better mixing could really just stand out, and just, I don't know, it could really stand out a lot. The mixing does seem that it could do with a bit of work, because the vocals are sometimes drowned out, or at least quieter than the lead sort of synths. The drums are at a good level. Again, I think a bit more humanizing of them could really just take it to the next level. And the mix is what I think ruins the song, almost. Not that the song's bad, it is a really good song. The mix just makes it all... It seems like everything's the same sort of volume. So you're trying to focus on the vocals, or you're trying to focus on this instrument, but it's hard to focus when you're hearing loudly both instruments at the same time, as well as whatever other instruments are in there. So some like automation mixing, so where volume kind of lowers at parts and increases at others to just bring more attention to specific parts, could really work. I also love the swell vocals, like the ones that are constantly going, increasing and decreasing in volume to making a swell. It's almost like it's mixing itself, if that makes sense. Just adding tension to it and stressing parts of, like, it's like stressing words almost in sentences, or enunciating specifically. It's making those the focus, and that's what the swell does in this. I think the ending of this song is near perfect in my eyes, which is a bad thing to say generally, but something that is very different about it, which I appreciate, is the chimes still stay towards the end, and the vocals seem to, I don't know if it's just the mix, but they seem to increase in volume or be more prominent, which could be because of the rest of the song being full of a lot of other instruments. This ending, where it's kind of just the vocals and this little soft, delicate chime, just kind of resonates really nicely, resonates really well with the rest of the album, and is a pretty good almost end song. I do want to clarify, I really love the way this album is set out and how the songs are ordered. You know, I think it has a lot of thought put into it, especially the titles, the order of the songs, and the album art. Like I said earlier, I really love the album art, which is so vibrant in colour. And yeah. Anyway, next song, and the final song of this album, which is 3 minutes and 26 seconds in duration, is Three Angels. Now, as a song in and of itself, is very much a sound that we've kind of grown familiar with throughout the track already. Sorry, throughout the album already, and combines a lot of elements from other tracks. And in the story sense, it definitely makes it as a conclusion to the story that we've already heard, or at least parts of the story we've already heard. There is a lot of, like, the first sort of lines are about a darker subject, which I'm not gonna specifically say, but because of the way the sung, they don't seem dark. They seem, I'm not sure. It takes an element of disorientation from thinking about the subject which is talking about, and it pads it out a little bit so it doesn't seem as dark, and it makes you want to learn and want to listen without the discomfort that the subject brings. The idea, it mentioned in the chorus, something amazing happened at the foot of the character's bed, or the person's bed. So I'm seeing three angels. It's very thought-provoking, and it reminds, I compare a lot of things to help me understand them and to help other people sometimes understand them, and in this sense it's reminding me of the three ghosts in Christmas Carol by Charles Dickinson. Is it Charles Dickinson? Charles Dickens. Sorry, Charles Dickens. Reminds me of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, with Scrooge being visited by three ghosts, Christmas past, present, and yet to come. The three seems a prominent number, which, again, I sound like an English teacher, but the three, there could be a million reasons for it. Three is also sometimes representative of in the biblical sense, with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. In Scrooge, it's past, present, future. And in this, it's unclear, but you can kind of put your own elements towards which, or what each of these angels sort of represent, whether it's three people trying to help, three different, especially with the darker subject of the song, maybe three people trying to help, or three people in the character's perspective who understand, or could learn, or could help in whatever way that may be, or three memories. There's a million ways to interpret it, and it's unclear which, or what the actual meaning behind the three angels is, except that this character or person in the story sees them as a figure after a dark history, or a dark trouble that's happened. Another idea, it's very Orwellian, maybe? I don't know how you pronounce it. I don't know. You know what I mean? Mentioned here, the TV cameras pointed at his head after he took something. I'm not going to say what, because darker subject, I don't want to explicitly say what the darker subject is about, but there's a Truman Show, Orwell sort of experience going on in my eyes that's representative of being watched constantly or being judged, and maybe that's, in a storytelling aspect, what the three angels are also doing. They're watching, they're observing. They may not be able to help the situation, but they can report on it and watch it and test or research or learn from the outcomes. And that's exactly what the TV camera's doing. It's an all-seeing eye sort of thing, which, with the album as a whole, has this overarching theme of characters and learning, a lot of learning throughout the album, whether about love, relationships, life. That's another overarching theme, which I think this song kind of very clearly summarises very well. The song is like an ethical debate. It's like an ethical debate amongst itself, and the three angels seem like doctors. The more I listen to it, the more I'm kind of learning about the story, and in this sense, they seem like doctors helping with assisting. I again, like I said, I don't want to specifically spoil, or I don't want to spoil the song as such, and I don't want to talk about the exact subject because it is a very dark subject, but it talks about morality. It's talking about the morality of the situation and the TV publicising of this grey area almost. So the three angels could be interpreted as different, and it's very interesting. Towards like a break in the song almost, or a quieter part of it, there's a lot of very beautiful falsetto singing. And that, I can't get over this the vocalist. It's a very beautiful voice and very talented, like incredibly talented, especially with like changing in like a huge vocal range, which is very rare to see, and very rare to see with such great how it's done, such great talent towards it. Obviously there's a lot of practice that goes behind that, and I don't doubt that this musician has a lot of experience. Right at the end of the song, that is a different ending. It's very sci-fi feel to it, dream-like, or as the theme of the song is, kind of fading in a sense, very fading into a light, twinkly sort of sound, which definitely fits the theme of the song. That's a brilliant ending, and it just works really well with the topic of the song, the lyrics. So I do think that's a really good song. As a summary for the full album, the album as a whole, 10 tracks is a great number, at about total runtime with 46 minutes and 29 seconds, or 30 seconds. 46 minutes and 29 seconds. And I think it's a very good length. For 10 songs, that's pretty good. And all of the songs are incredibly well produced, well written, and well performed, especially for the vocals. The guitar parts are very good. They could do potentially with more time spent on the mixing process potentially in the future, for future releases I should say, and just making sure those vocals are crisp and really standing out in the mix, because that is a very unique element that should be right at the front and forefront of any future music, because of the unique nature of the vocalist and the beautiful range that they've got. I personally don't think 10 songs is enough, but that's my own personal preference, and I would love for more songs from this artist, which another album has just released a couple of days ago, so I'd love to hear that soon. Yeah, something really interests me about this album, that there are a variety of stories and variety of different, at least characters or people being discussed and talked about throughout it, different experiences in life, and the last song is an interesting conclusion to that, as a song primarily focused about death, in a specific form and how that comes about, and in a specific form, which is a very different theme to what the opening song was, Fast Maneuvers, and A Fast Life That Goes Nowhere. It kind of fits the overarching theme of having a head in the clouds almost, and dreaming and stories and completely different world when your head is in the clouds. I would highly recommend listening to the album, or listening to the artist in general. It is a very unique sound, and I personally would describe it as wildly brilliant. I can't get over the vocals. They're just incredible high, like value in a sense, with the vocals, because the huge range, the dynamics, and the variety of styles. The tonality of the vocals is really good as well. The timbre, I don't know how you pronounce it. It is a very interesting take on indie rock, indie pop, that with the electronic elements kind of morphs into its own genre, and it's very interesting. I would highly recommend listening to The Wild Wolves, the album King of Clouds, and any future music they work on or release, because if this album is anything to go off, this is something very special and should be praised, because I assume this is an independent artist. I will check that now. It's an independent band or artist. As a band, the Wild Wolves, I am anticipating and looking forward to some future releases of theirs. I do think that more focus could be spent on the mixing. The production is brilliant and no more work needs to be done on that. I think the mixing is definitely a factor that would bring it to the next level, make the future releases, future songs just stand out from the crowd so much, and potentially just take it to the next level, as I've been saying a few times. I think the album art, like I've said before, it just stands out as well. It's something I've never seen before. The style of it and it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful album art. It's very unique, very interesting, and technical is a good word to describe it. I really appreciate it. So that will be all today. So thank you very much for listening and watching and hearing me talk about this album. If you would like to see more of these, let me know in the comments. And if you would listen to this album, let me know what you think about it. If you want, Wild Wolves does have a website, thewildwolves.net. They're an American band, so if they ever go on tour, I would love to hear them, love to see them. But I'm from the UK, so that is not likely anytime soon. But I would recommend checking them out. They have about 40 monthly listeners, and I think they deserve much more than that. So I appreciate you watching. Wishing you all the best. Thank you very much. See you later.